This Sunday, April 28th at 3 p.m. at the Lutheran Church of the Cross, the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble will be holding their third concert in the 2023-24 season. Called Fire and Ice, this concert will feature music of Stravinsky, Pierre Dubois, David Maslanka, amongst others, performed by one of the premier wind ensembles here on the prairies. One of the other highlights of this concert is the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble will be putting a spotlight on one of Winnipeg's finest high school bands. They will be opening up the stage to the Fort Richmond Collegiate Wind Ensemble. And joining me here over Zoom to talk about the concert on Sunday, I am joined by Winnipeg Wind Ensemble Director Jenny Helmer. Hey, Jenny, nice to have you here again.
Hi, Chris. It's great to see you.
Mhm. I was looking at the program for this upcoming concert on Sunday. It looks great. And it's also the last concert for the WWE for 2023-24. How was the year for you this year as director, and how does it feel to have another season under the belt?
Oh, it was a great season. We played lots of challenging music and interesting, different music, a broad variety of things, and I think that we pulled it off every single time. We worked hard and sounded good, and our audiences were very pleased with our performances. So yeah, it's been a great year.
Yeah, fantastic. The concert is called Fire and Ice, and I think you can figure out why. You've got Stravinsky's Firebird on the program, but you're also going to be playing a new piece by Winnipeg pedagogue and composer Fraser Linklater. You're going to be doing his piece called Icescapes. Before we get to his piece, can you tell our listeners about Fraser and all the wonderful things he's done for the band community here in Winnipeg?
Well, I'm sure you could do that too, Chris.
Hmm.
Fraser, actually, the first time I encountered Fraser really was when I was in one of my first years of teaching, and he was studying in Ann Arbor, and he came back to Winnipeg to and did a term position for me when I had my first child. But he was already a mainstay of the community here, uh, high school band director who then became the director of bands at the University of Manitoba. And he's done lots of guest conducting for us as well, for the wind ensemble. And he's been writing a lot of music and arranging a lot of music and publishing a lot of pedagogical materials for band directors' use. And it's all free on if you're a member of the Manitoba Band Association, because he really is just interested in promoting music education in our province and around the country. And he's just a great guy, and we're really lucky to have that resource.
Yeah, speaking for myself, I remember Fraser just recruit like he knew my name like in grade 11. He just had this wonderful ability to remember people and welcome people. And he taught for a few years out at Brandon University, actually, while I was out there. And he was director of bands when I was out there as well. He was just a wonderful teacher and a wonderful conducting teacher and
Mm-hmm.
pedagogue. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell us about his piece, Icescapes? What's it like?
Well, it's subtitled An Homage to Our Disappearing Arctic. So it's sort of about melting,
Huh.
and it has lots of interesting sound effects. So he uses, because Fraser's a brass player, he
Mhm.
understands how to get sort of different sound effects from brass instruments. So there's a sound of wind, Arctic breezes at the beginning of the piece, the sound of dripping icy water,
Mm.
sliding things. The brass, when they're playing in block chords, are almost like big chunks of ice or icebergs that might be sort of calving off into the sea. It's got a huge dynamic range. It's full of interesting effects, and yeah,
Mm.
it's a cool piece.
Mm.
Pun intended.
Yeah, yeah. How long is it?
It's only about 5 minutes long.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. One of the real stunners on the program is this extremely moving piece, The Silent Land by Steve Donahue. Am I saying that right?
Yes. Yeah. Daniel.
I saw a performance of it this morning on YouTube. It is just amazing. Can you talk about Donahue's inspiration for this piece?
The inspiration for this piece came from the Sandy Hook massacre, which most of us will remember from 2012. There's a personal connection with that too, because one of our professors at the University of Manitoba um, moved back to Sandy Hook right before that happened. And so there's that connection. For Steve Danu, he went to school there from grade 3 until grade 5
Oh,
at
wow.
Sandy Hook Elementary. So it took him a long time to write the piece, he says, because it was just so close to him and he wasn't sure how to really do it justice. But it's it's about grief, I think, as a journey. So
Yeah.
it starts out with a very sort of processional uh, vibe to it, a relentless rhythm that reminds me of people walking behind a coffin on the way to a burial.
Mm,
But it's also full of hope and full of positive energy to more towards the end of the piece, and ultimately the message and his inspiration came from a poem, uh, Into the Silent Land, Remember Me When I Have Gone Away. And that is narrated by usually a child,
mm.
just part of the poem. And we have a great kid who's doing that for us, one of my students at Linden Meadows. Um, yeah, so the idea that we try to remember the children and the adults that died, and not dwell on the circumstance, just to hold their memory in our hearts as we
Mhm.
come up to the 12th anniversary of that
Yeah, and
event.
like I was listening to it, and it's beautiful. It's really, and then the poem is not very long. It kind of actually comes close to the end, and it just sort of
Mhm,
drives it home even more. Yeah.
mhm.
The student is Rockford Grant, and he's one of
Yes,
your students
yes,
at your school. Oh,
yes,
that's
yeah.
fantastic. Uh, the concert is very much a made in Manitoba thing. You're going to be doing a saxophone concerto by Pierre Dubois that's been arranged for band by the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble's bass clarinet player, David Byrne. Before we get to the soloist, how does the piece transfer over? It was originally written for string orchestra and
Mhm.
saxophone. How does David transfer that over to wind ensemble? What's the orchestration like?
Well, David has a lot of expertise in that area. So he teaches at the university, and knows what wind ensembles can and can't do. So it's been very carefully and thoughtfully arranged.
Mm,
And I would say it's come together pretty easily. The way he's written it doesn't overbalance the saxophone. And yeah, I think it works really well.
yeah, and I was just thinking, like, I think he's a Delius specialist as well. Like, I think he did his dissertation on the music of Frederick Delius, and so by studying Delius's music, he probably would have learned some of those concepts as well.
Mhm, mhm.
Uh, what can you tell us about the saxophone soloist Kun Huang? Am I saying that
He's
right?
this, we call him Rock. So Rock is his name that everybody calls him. He's just a powerhouse. He's a student at Fort Richmond Collegiate, so he'll also be playing in the wind ensemble. Um, yeah, he's just a fantastic, technically brilliant player.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
fine young saxophonist. Mhm.
Mhm.
Speaking of Fort Richmond, you're going to be joined on this concert by the Fort Richmond Collegiate Wind Ensemble. How did this collaboration happen?
Well, we traditionally do have a guest ensemble. We have done that for many years. In our new venue, we don't have as much space, so we've been playing with just doing smaller ensembles. At the beginning of this year, we've had a couple of smaller groups. Of course, our youth wind ensemble and
Mhm.
a chamber music group from Vincent Massey in our first concert. But we decided that this would work because the Fort Richmond Wind Ensemble is about the same size as our own wind ensemble, so we can fit them in. Cheryl Ferguson, their
Mhm.
director, is also a long-standing member of the organization, and so it seemed like a good fit because we'd never actually had Fort Richmond join us. We've had lots of other bands in the past, so it just worked out really, really well.
Mhm. Um, there's from a pedagogical or from a teaching standpoint, there's the obvious benefits for the students, right? Seeing the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble and just seeing gives them something to aspire to. But I'm going to sort of turn it around. What do the musicians of the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble, what do you think they'll take away from Fort Richmond's performance? I'm just thinking here, I know a lot of the members of the Winnipeg Wind Ensemble are also band directors themselves. What do you think they'll
Mhm.
take away?
I would assume that they won't be surprised by the high quality of the performances.
Mm,
Most band directors will have heard the Fort Richmond Wind Ensemble play at the band festival in February. I think they'll be impressed. You know,
yeah, something
I
great.
I certainly expect to be impressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The last piece on the program is a suite for band from Stravinsky's ballet, The Firebird. For me, when I think of Stravinsky's music, I think of orchestration and rhythm. For you as a conductor, what challenges does the piece create? And can you talk about some of the things you needed to work on, rehearse with the wind ensemble in regards to that piece?
Well, it's quite a difficult piece technically. The woodwinds are playing a lot of the string parts, so it's a bit of a monster in that sense. But
Mm,
also from an orchestration perspective, uh, balance issues. Just believe it or not, one of the most difficult things is just the way it's been written, the
mm,
way the time signatures have been written out. And oh, I'm sorry. Um, so what we've had to work on pretty much the style of that kind of orchestral writing. Uh, Not everyone in the ensemble is as familiar with the piece, and so we've worked on that. We've worked on the expressive elements and a lot on the technical aspects for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Stravinsky's writing for the woodwinds in that piece is technical enough, and then to throw in string parts as well. Must be a real barn
Absolutely.
burner. Mhm. Jenny, this has just been so great. I'm going to wrap up the conversation by asking, can you give us a sneak peek behind what you have lined up for 2024-25, or is that what the summer is for? Uh, any thoughts on next year? What do you have anything specific in mind?
Well, of course, I have thought about what we will be doing next year. Certainly, there's another piece by Pete Meekin on the concert that we just ran out of time to program this time. It's
Mhm.
called Fire in the Sky. That will be a great piece for everybody to hear. And then, yeah, there are other things floating around. I have probably 5 years of worth of repertoire that I've listened to and thought about, and it's just a matter of settling on what we might do and what the group is interested in. And there'll
Mhm.
always be a piece of standard repertoire that we'll try to get at and present. And yeah, other than that, I can't really say because you're right. That's what the summer's
That's
for.
what the summer's for. Ginny, as always, this has just been so great to talk to you about Fire and Ice. The concert happens on Sunday, April the 28th at 3 p.m. at the Lutheran Church of the Cross. All the best. I'm sure it's going to be just fantastic. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. This has been great.
Thanks, Chris.